Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Seiler. I'm an associate partner at McKinsey based in San Francisco. And I spend all of my time thinking about the future of people and talent and the implications of AI on the future of work. And so Wendy and I have been spending a lot of time thinking about this topic, and it's been certainly a hot topic at Culturati of how do you really need to think about upskilling, reskilling, and redeploying folks in the era of AI. So we'll talk a little bit about that for the next few minutes.
Hi, I'm Wendy Miller. I'm the partner in the Atlanta office and the Chief People Officer for North America. As Charlotte mentioned, we talked a lot today about the upskilling for AI, and we brought to life a few examples of how we've been doing this at McKinsey and the change journey that we've been on. It's been quite an adventure, and so I'll let Charlotte kind of walk us through some of the foundations of what we're going to talk about, and then we can talk through just our experience to date as we've been on this journey.
Awesome. I think what we've heard now from everybody talking in Culturati thus far is we all recognize the impact of AI broadly. We know that there's something like $4.4 trillion at stake in potential GDP growth over the next 10 years. And we know that, 70% plus of knowledge workers are impacted in some way by technology, or at least by AI. The thing that I think has been so interesting for the conversations we've been having so far these past couple of days is it's not like roles are all fundamentally going away as a result of AI. It's instead, how are roles being augmented? How does a software engineer today look different 5 years from now? Because they have new skills, they need to spend their time on new and different activities versus today. Because as you start to imagine a world where there are agents or AIs taking on kind of like first and second order tasks, human potential is even more important and needs to be kind of upskilled and developed differently to support that. And so I think what's been most interesting for us is we're starting to say, okay, yes, there are some roles that will be fundamentally replaced by AI, or at least that we imagine the activities of today just won't need to exist with a human in the loop any longer. That might be, some of your technical support engineers at a call center, for example. You'll still need some, but most of that can hopefully be automated by an agent. You then get, though, to most roles, which are going to be impacted somehow by AI. And I think we're starting to see what that impact could be, but we haven't yet gotten all the way to the end where we're saying, hey, this role now today does these 15 things and tomorrow it's going to do these 20. We're starting to figure out how to plan for those roles differently, but it's just the beginning. And so I think a lot of the conversations have been, where do we need to get ahead? What are the skills that we need to be actually spending more and more time on now? It was funny, we had a conversation with a few university professors that were asking, what should universities be doing differently and how should they think about the skills that matter more and more? Because we're starting to see, it's the interpersonal skills, the leadership skills, it's the communication skills, it's the, strategic thinking skills that matter more and more.
Exactly.
And it's also like the new roles that are going to exist, like the prompt engineers, the ethical AI leader, those won't even, we haven't even conceived of what they will be. And so I think on my kind of soapbox, I think the role of HR now has become even more important because we realize now we're on a culture transformation journey. It's not about tech adoption, it's actually about rethinking how work gets done and how we need to get our employees excited about the future and not afraid of it. And so I think so much of, Wendy, what you've been doing with McKinsey is an exciting moment as we think about what is the change management required to, one, get people smart on the new technology, but then two, really use it in such a way that we're seeing actual productivity. And I think the conversations have been so great of what are you now doing with that freed up capacity? It's not just about, I was saying this earlier, the walk the dog phenomenon of all of a sudden you've found an hour in your day so you can go take your dog for a longer walk. It's, no, what can you actually do with that extra hour to be better either for you or your company? So what do you think? What have been your reflections as you think about the McKinsey journey?
Well, I think as we talk about the changes that we've made, you're exactly right. There are certain roles that will go away, and some of the more basic call center kind of basic roles can obviously be replaced with technology. But then there's this element of how do you augment the role as you're talking about. And so what we've seen is, can you shift some of the work that feels really task-oriented or routine and have technology aid the individual so that it frees up so that they can do the stuff where they're really special. I love the idea of being a domain accelerator. And so how does it take your expertise or the specialness that you bring to a role and allow you to have that time and energy to do it? One of the examples that we could talk about is just the idea of using evaluator aid. And so can we use Gen AI and voice to text and our ability to synthesize notes so that you can allow the evaluator, or the person that's trying to give the feedback, to spend more time with the individual and spending time on the development. In our conversations, we talked about what does an organization need to do to be ready for all of this? And so how do you reinstill a growth mindset? How do you create a culture where it's safe to fail? Because as we're on this journey, you're going to make some changes. Some things are going to work. Some things are not going to work. And if your organization is scared to fail, they're going to be less willing to experiment and to try new things. And then how do you have the ability to think across different disciplines and to be the critical thinker to really bring things together to get the best results for your organization? It's been a really fun conversation. I think the potential is so vast, and we're just at the beginning of it for most organizations as they think about, okay, where do I make these changes? And can I think about some of those places that are the sacred cows of the organization and go after places where you can have the change be throughout the organization rather than just in a small pocket here or there.
I loved that when you're talking about the sacred cow point, I think it's so spot on, because I think for so long when we thought about automation or technology in general, it's been how do you get rid of the kind of like the menial tasks out of the system? The way you've talked about it, even in our McKinsey journey, it's so much about, hey, where can we take something that we actually do really well today already, that we take a lot of pride in, that matters a lot to us, but how can we actually use AI to augment or to make the experience better for both the evaluee and the evaluator, to say, hey, it's not that we've actually gotten rid of the task, it's that we've amplified what it is that you as a human need to do, whereas an agent or a bot of some kind can make the rest of like the note taking, everything else go away. I think that's such an important distinction between this transformation versus any before it.
Right. I think we're on a journey. I think that there was a lot of discussion over the last 2 days of Culturati that everyone is wrestling with these questions. How do you think about where you should have the right impact? How do you think about the talent of the future? The university and professors are definitely thinking about what are the right technical skills, what are the right functional skills, and what are the right critical thinking skills. And so really look forward to partnering with all of these great leaders on really changing the way we work.
I think that's so spot on. And the last thing I will say too is we're starting to realize more and more that we've been in this land of pilots with AI, and the technology adoption has been so piecemeal to date that I think right now, obviously, we're talking about next 5 years, what is the evolution of work? What do we think about the roles and skills that you need for the future? But there's step one, which is like, what is the actual fundamental change management required to get folks ready to leverage the technology that does already exist? And we're starting to see our clients more and more asking the question of, what does enterprise capability building need to look like? What is the role of leaders in this moment to make people feel comfortable with using the technology? I feel like that's step one. And then in our minds too, step two and maybe step three is all about how do you do talent planning differently? How do you think about how to rewire how work gets done? We have a lot of conversations about there's value at stake for sure, but how do we actually find that and how do we make sure that it flows through? That feels like the journey ahead, and for future Culturati conversations, I can't wait to discuss how we're starting to see that value kind of come to life.
Yeah, it'll be amazing to see what we say next year, won't it?
Yes, it will.